You're not the only one searching for answers. There is something in the universe, in people, in failures, and in encounters that is also trying to find you. But this meeting does not occur through words. It appears as signs, unexpected coincidences, and small situations that affect you in ways you cannot fully explain. Jung called this synchronicity. Synchronicity is more than coincidence. It is when the soul chooses to express itself, using reality as a mirror. When you understand what truly lies behind these events that simply occur, life stops feeling like a chain of random moments and begins to feel like a quiet conversation between you and something greater. In this video, you will understand the true role of synchronicity in your life, and not in a mystical or imaginary sense, but in a deep, real, and transformative way. Watch until the end, because when you see this clearly, even the most painful moments in your story will begin to make sense. And if this kind of content resonates with you, consider subscribing to the channel if you have not yet. Have you ever felt that a meeting, a phrase, or even a small delay happened for a larger reason? Something inside you sensed it was not just coincidence. It felt as if life found a way to tell you something without using words. Maybe it was a book left on a park bench with the exact title you needed, or someone who appeared unexpectedly to guide you toward a path you had not noticed before. It could even have been a loss, an error, or a failure that over time pushed you exactly where you needed to be. These moments, although subtle, carry a force that pure logic cannot explain. They touch something inside you, a type of memory you do not recall having, yet suddenly it feels completely clear. You feel it. It is as if the world, for a brief moment, answered something your soul had been asking. That is synchronicity. It is when an external event aligns with an inner state in such a meaningful way that it cannot simply be chance. It is not superstition. It is the soul attempting to communicate through reality. It is the unconscious revealing itself through encounters, images, and living symbols. When you become aware of this, everything changes. Life no longer feels like cold randomness, but becomes a quiet yet deeply personal conversation. Jung understood that not every sign is synchronicity, but when it truly is, you feel it. It is not something you can prove with numbers, yet it is also not something you can honestly deny in those moments. A question begins to echo. What if the thing that found me was also searching for me? Perhaps you are going through a confusing phase filled with uncertainty or forced pauses. Maybe you are trying to understand why certain doors are not opening or why specific people are appearing now in your journey. None of this is random, but it is not simple either, because what is trying to reveal itself may still require you to slow down, listen to yourself, and pay closer attention. You may not fully understand everything happening, yet something real exists beneath the surface of the chaos. When you begin to listen, the world starts to speak in a subtle manner, in a way that touches and transforms you. As you start listening to life's signals, another quality must develop within you: discernment. Not everything that happens carries hidden meaning, and at the same time, not everything is purely random. Jung was careful about this. He acknowledged that some coincidences are simply random encounters without emotional weight and without a true connection to what is happening inside us. But when an external experience seems to respond directly to your inner state, when it resonates and stirs something within you, then it may not be mere coincidence. It may be synchronicity. The difference lies in the impact. A synchronicity does not pass unnoticed. It pauses you. It creates an inner shock or an unexpected calm. It may bring tears or leave you speechless. You feel as though it was meant specifically for you, and it does not matter if the person beside you sees nothing unusual. The sign is not collective, it is personal. It is filled with subjectivity and fits exactly where you are emotionally. That is where confusion can arise. When we strongly crave meaning, almost anything can appear as a sign. The mind begins shaping events to match what it wants to see, not necessarily what is actually happening. That is why Jung stated that synchronicity is valid only when it touches a genuine layer of the psyche, when it connects to an authentic inner process, rather than a passing desire or a fantasy of control. The key is not to chase signs everywhere, but to notice what truly affects you. Ask yourself honestly, did this move me? Did this challenge me? If the answer is yes, then there may be something worth exploring. Perhaps it is a message from the unconscious, not an oracle, not a prophecy, but a symbolic response, an opportunity to see yourself more clearly. Not everything that shines is light, but sometimes the smallest spark is enough to remind you that you are not lost. You simply need to look differently and trust that where emotional truth exists, direction may also exist. Noticing what truly affects you requires more than attention. It requires presence. Signs do not shout. They whisper. The difficulty is that most of us have learned to live in constant noise, mental, emotional, and digital. We remain so busy searching for answers that we forget to become quiet and actually hear them. Jung understood that the unconscious does not impose itself. It suggests and invites. But if you are always in action mode, always trying to control or logically explain everything, it becomes difficult to notice these invitations. Synchronicity does not occur simply because you want it. It occurs when you are available. That availability is openness, a form of inner listening that does not force life into a fixed plan, but allows it to reveal itself as it truly is. When you become quiet, even internally, the world begins to feel different. Small details become noticeable. Intuitions that once seemed insignificant begin to carry importance. Most importantly, you realize that life was never silent. You were simply too distracted to hear it. It is like tuning an old radio. The signals were always present in the air, but you only begin to hear them clearly when you gently adjust the dial with sensitivity. The correct frequency is not loud. It is precise. It resonates. When you find it, there is a strange peace, as if something quietly aligned without effort. This kind of listening requires courage, because as you grow more sensitive, you also become more vulnerable. Yet it is within that vulnerability that the soul begins to reveal itself. You start living in a more symbolic and intuitive way. Events continue to occur externally, but now they gain meaning internally. And gradually, a new kind of trust begins to form. A trust that does not depend on guarantees, but on a living sense of connection. You start to see intelligence in encounters, wisdom in pauses, and even in the most confusing moments, a form of hidden coherence that only becomes visible when you stop resisting and begin listening. This silent listening that opens within you is not rational. It is not about decoding everything with logic. The unconscious does not communicate through words. It communicates through symbols, images, atmospheres, and most strongly, through encounters. Jung viewed the unconscious as a living and autonomous intelligence that seeks expression. When we do not hear its whispers in dreams, it attempts to reach us through daily life. People, situations, repeated phrases, and recurring patterns can all be symbolic expressions. Often, the unconscious does not simply want interpretation, it wants recognition. That is why certain events affect you in ways that are difficult to explain. They may not make logical sense, but they make emotional sense. They bring something hidden to the surface. They can trigger unexpected tears, chills, or a quiet pause. Because they are not merely facts, they are messages, and not always comfortable ones. The unconscious is not focused on your comfort. It is focused on your wholeness. What appears outside is sometimes exactly what you have been avoiding inside. When something unusual happens, something unplanned that disrupts your path, it may be exactly where transformation exists. It is not randomness blocking you. It is randomness revealing what you have not yet seen. These symbolic encounters, when experienced with presence, act like mirrors. They do not arrive to confirm your certainties. They come to reveal your shadows, awaken memories, or break the rigid logic you have been using to control your life. It is the unconscious saying, "Look again, but this time with an open heart." And it is in the power of synchronicity grows through that kind of attentive gaze because it does not demand instant interpretation. It asks for surrender, the willingness to accept that not everything must be understood immediately. Yet everything can be felt sincerely. By opening yourself to these symbolic encounters, you move closer not only to answers, but also to yourself. Symbolic encounters do not always arrive as gentle gifts. Sometimes they appear as breaks, as situations that seem to be going well and suddenly collapse. It may be someone who disappoints you, a path that closes, or a plan that fails to unfold, and your first response is usually pain, rejection, or anger. But what if that is precisely where the real sign exists? There is a part of the soul that matures only when something the ego strongly desired does not happen. Not because you acted wrongly, but because perhaps it was not aligned with who you are becoming. Jung understood that the psyche seeks integration, not just satisfaction. This means life sometimes interrupts a desire to return you to what truly matters. When you feel frustrated, the unconscious may be redirecting you. When you lose something, it may be shielding you from what you still cannot see. It is not punishment. It is coherence. It is the soul's process, which follows a logic different from social expectations. This requires a difficult form of trust, the belief that even what hurts may carry meaning, and that what feels like delay may actually be alignment. Of course, this does not justify everything. Not all pain is fair, and not every loss is a sign. But when there is a deep emotional impact, when something forces you to reconsider everything, perhaps the universe is not working against you. Perhaps it is working for you on a broader scale that is still unfolding. In such moments, synchronicity does not appear as a miracle. It appears as disruption. It cuts through illusion, dismantles expectation, and reveals a part of you that had not yet found a voice. Over time, you realize that the painful no from the past created space for a more genuine yes to emerge later, not immediately, but at the right time, in the soul's timing. When life aligns with your inner process, it rarely gives you what you want right away. Instead, it first gives you what you need to become the kind of person who can hold what truly matters. That preparation does not always come wrapped in beauty. Sometimes it arrives as loss, silence, or frustration. Yet when you reflect on what it taught you, you see that you gained something, even within the pain. Some signs do not come to confirm what you already knew. They arrive to dismantle everything you thought you knew. They break certainties and interrupt plans, and at first they seem like mistakes of fate. But with time and the courage to observe, you begin to understand they are hidden liberations. Not every synchronicity appears as a gentle insight. Sometimes it shows up as a no that forces you to release control, a love that does not develop, a project that looks perfect but stalls, an opportunity that slips away within seconds. You wonder, why now? Why in this way? Perhaps it is because you were insisting on a path that was not truly yours. Or maybe you were ready for something greater, but still holding on to what felt safe. Life, in its quiet wisdom, may close the door you most wanted to open, not out of cruelty, but out of coherence. Because the ego seeks what is familiar, while the soul responds to what is true. Jung understood this dynamic. He warned about the risk of projecting our desires excessively onto the world and expecting everything to unfold exactly as the ego imagines. When it does not, we feel frustration. Yet that frustration, when faced honestly, can become a turning point because it reveals where we were blind, where we were forcing outcomes, and where we needed to release control. There is freedom in that refusal. Freedom from a script that no longer fits, and freedom to recognize that it was not that immediate yes you needed, but the empty space it would leave behind. In that space, something new can begin. Something born not from your will, but from your listening. Synchronicity, in this sense, is neither reward nor punishment. It is adjustment. It is a deep response to a question you may not even realize you are asking. When it appears as a no, it does so to free you, free from the role you were trying to maintain, free from a story that no longer represents who you are, and clearing the path so you can walk with greater authenticity. Yes, it hurts, but the pain that reveals meaning is different from the pain that paralyzes. The first carries purpose, the second does not. When you begin to recognize this difference, something inside you shifts. You stop resisting reality and start moving with it, even when it pushes you away from what once seemed ideal. Deep within, you sense it was not the end. It was a beginning in disguise. Sometimes the sign you need does not arrive through beauty or wonder. It comes through discomfort, through the person who challenges you, the careless comment, or the situation that unsettles you and makes you ask why it affected you so strongly. Jung noted that everything that irritates us about others can help us understand ourselves, not because the other person is necessarily correct, but because a disproportionate reaction reveals something still hidden within us. The shadow, the unseen, the denied aspect. This is where synchronicity can operate in a less obvious yet deeper manner. It can appear as friction. Irritation in this context is not merely discomfort. It is a mirror. It is something the world presents directly so you can notice what you still avoid facing. A judgment that hurts may touch an insecurity. A rejection may reveal dependence. Someone else's mistake may reflect a part of you that you are still trying too hard to control. Facing this is not easy because the first impulse is to blame the other person, escape the feeling, or rationalize the situation. But when you begin to observe what the discomfort is attempting to reveal, something opens within you. You understand that it is not punishing you, it is challenging you. It is calling you to grow. The synchronicity that provokes can be just as powerful as the one that enchants because it exposes unresolved areas. It shows where wounds remain open and, with courage, offers the opportunity to heal them. For this, however, you must step out of the victim role and ask yourself, what is this showing me about myself? The answer does not always arrive quickly. Sometimes it appears gradually in the following days, when the emotional dust settles and your soul processes the impact. But it does come, and when it does, it transforms you. The irritation stops being simple wear and tear and becomes a sign. You even begin to feel gratitude for the stumbles because they pulled you out of autopilot and reconnected you with who you truly are. It takes maturity to recognize wisdom within friction, but once you reach that stage, everything becomes material for awareness. Even pain, anger, and that uncomfortable encounter you wanted to avoid. At a deeper level, life does not aim to please you. It aims to awaken you. After many such provocations, there are moments when life communicates clearly through a calm yet firm inner impulse, almost like a silent push from within. It is when the soul says, "Go." You do not have all the answers. You are not fully in control, yet something within you knows. It knows it is time to move, to say yes, to change direction, or simply to trust. That feeling does not come with anxiety. On the contrary, true intuition is calm. It is simple. It does not argue, shout, or pressure. It presents itself as a quiet conviction, and when you listen with your whole being, you feel peace. Jung distinguished between instinct and intuition, but considered both valid expressions of the psyche. Instinct protects, while intuition guides, and they often work together when the soul must make decisions that the rational mind cannot fully explain. A non-rational yes, yet deeply coherent. It is an inner movement that, when respected, opens unexpected paths. It is common to ignore this calling because it does not fit existing plans, or because it appears too irrational. However, synchronicity does not always follow linear logic. It appears in unlikely meetings, in sudden decisions that later make complete sense, and in paths you did not even realize you desired until you walked them. The closer you come to yourself, the stronger this intuition becomes, not because you have become more mystical, but because you have become more honest with yourself. The soul does not reveal itself to those who pretend. It reveals itself to those who listen sincerely. Often that listening happens through the body, a chill, a release of tension, or a fatigue that disappears the moment you decide. It is the body confirming what the soul doesn't speak in the way the mind expects. It already knows. Trusting this inner movement becomes a practice because the ego seeks guarantees, while the self seeks wholeness. At times, that means moving forward without knowing exactly where the path will lead. Simply trusting that the next step is right for now, and that is enough. You don't need to understand everything. You only need to be fully present in your next step. When the soul speaks, it does not demand certainty. It offers direction. Over time, you learn to trust that quiet clarity that deep down already feels like an answer. As you become more open to listening to yourself, something interesting begins to happen. The world around you seems to respond with subtle movements. People appear at the right moment, an unexpected invitation arises, or a line in a book feels written especially for you, as if life is also seeking you while you seek it. Jung suggested that as you search for the self also moves toward you. By taking the first step toward your essence, a larger intelligence seems to organize the path. See, this is not about magic, it is about resonance. When you are aligned with your inner process, the outer world starts to reflect that alignment. The most remarkable aspect is that these encounters are not forced. They occur when you stop chasing what should be and begin living what is. In that state of presence, space opens for the new to arrive, and the unexpected can become revelation. Often, what you need is not to move faster, but to become available. That availability emerges when you begin to trust that not everything depends on your effort, and that part of life responds to surrender rather than control. This response appears through paths that willpower alone could not create. You do not need to manipulate reality to receive what makes sense. You simply need to be awake. When you are awake, you recognize signs. You notice the value of a simple encounter, a passing phrase, or a coincidence that resonates deeply. None of this is predictable, yet it is profoundly coherent. Deep down, you are not only trying to reach a destination, you are being called. That calling becomes clear when there is real listening, presence, and the courage to allow yourself to be found. You are not alone on this path. There is something greater moving with you, something invisible yet perceptible. When you sense it, you understand that what you seek with an open heart is, in some way, also moving toward you. By now, you may realize that the events of your life are not as random as they once appeared. There is an invisible thread linking moments, people, and places, and that thread is woven not from logic, but from meaning and significance. The unconscious, as Jung described, is a living reality, and like all living things, it moves. When it moves, it finds mirrors in the world. The unconscious does not speak directly to consciousness. It requires a bridge, and that bridge is often everyday life. A symbol in a film, a piece of music that moves you, or a conversation overheard by chance can all reflect something emerging within. Life becomes a symbolic surface where what was hidden begins to take form. This is why certain situations repeat and certain patterns return. Not because you are cursed, but because something inside you has not yet been fully seen. The world continues to present it because the soul insists on being heard. When you begin to view events through this symbolic lens, something shifts. What changes is not what happens, but how you interpret it. Randomness stops feeling like an unpredictable enemy and becomes a tool for revelation. It is not that everything carries deep meaning, but many things do, and they have simply gone unnoticed. The unconscious needs the material of life to express itself. It appears through the external world while remaining in harmony with what is developing internally. This interplay between inner and outer worlds is what makes synchronicity so powerful. It is the moment when the mirror precisely reflects what the soul is trying to express. You do not need to decode everything or turn every event into a theory. Instead, you can ask honestly, why did this move me? Or what is this repetition trying to show me? Even these simple questions change your state of presence, and where there is presence, there is the possibility of integration. The world around you is not separate from you. It is part of your process. The more conscious you become, the clearer it is that chance, seen through the eyes of the soul, resembles a carefully disguised guidance system. As you grow more sensitive to what truly affects you, something begins to shift both inside and outside. Reality itself remains the same, but how it responds to you changes. Situations take new forms. People appear with different roles, and timing adjusts. You start to notice that when there is genuine openness, life opens as well. This shift does not come from expectation. It comes from surrender, not passive waiting for miracles, but stopping the push toward what does not flow. There is a difference between passivity and trust. Passivity paralyzes. Trust allows. Within that allowance, synchronicity finds space to act. You are no longer trying to control every step. You are learning to move with awareness, to feel, to wait, to act when the moment is right, and above all, to listen when the soul says, "Not yet." That refined listening transforms the way you live. Urgency softens, anxiety quiets, and in place of control, a form of trust emerges, one that can only be developed through practice. It is precisely when you release control that you begin to receive. Not just anything, but what truly makes sense, what resonates with who you are now, what fits your soul. Sometimes you did not even realize you needed it until it arrived. And when it does arrive, it does not come with excitement, but with clarity, with a calm recognition that says, "This is it." Such experiences cannot be manufactured. They occur when your inner and outer worlds align, when you are no longer trying to prove anything or protect yourself from everything. You are simply present, available, and receptive. Reality then seems to respond differently, not because it changed, but because you did. You are seeing with new eyes and listening with a more open heart. When this inner shift happens, the world stops being just a background and begins to act as a partner. It is no longer a battlefield, but a meaningful space. Even without having all the answers, you begin to walk more lightly because you sense you are not alone on the path, and you do not need to be. Life has always been speaking. Now you are listening. At this point, you may recognize that synchronicity is not something to chase like a hunt for miracles. It reveals itself when the soul awakens. It does not appear to confirm theories, but to bring meaning. It does not serve fantasies, but reminds you that life, even with its difficulties, carries a wisdom beyond logic. What you have lived, what affected you deeply, and what marked you in ways you can hardly explain were not random. They may have seemed chaotic, unfair, or without direction, but when you observe with presence and deeper listening, you begin to notice a consistent thread running through everything, a subtle language, a quiet dialogue between the world and your soul. Jung suggested that for those who pay attention, the world resembles a vast dream. And like every dream, it communicates through images, symbols, and sensations. Synchronicity is that language. It does not shout, yet it leaves an impression. It does not explain, yet it reveals. It offers no guarantees, but it gives direction. Real, intangible direction rooted in who you truly are. You do not need to become mystical or search for signs in every detail. You only need to be awake, open, and present. Synchronicity does not occur somewhere distant. It happens here, within ordinary life. It appears in daily experiences with their stumbles and wonders, their delays and encounters, their losses and new beginnings. This realization changes everything. You begin to see that what found you was also searching for you, that life is not testing you to punish you, but to align you, that the pain, as intense as it was, also marked a path, that the refusals created space, and that difficult encounters revealed truths you might not have seen on your own. None of this makes the journey easier, but it makes it more honest, and it is within that honesty that the soul begins to grow. When you stop chasing explanations and start living with meaning, when you understand that even silence can be an answer, you realize that the universe does speak, but it speaks to those who are awake. Perhaps the greatest answer you receive will not come from outside. It will come from your own perception, from the way you have begun to listen to yourself. From that place, everything changes. Not suddenly, but gradually, from the inside out. When this shift occurs, synchronicity stops being an exception and becomes a language, and life stops feeling random and becomes a meeting. If you have stayed until this point, consider sharing a simple comment. I recognize the signs. That phrase shows not only that you watched until the end, but that something within you may be starting to awaken. And if this content genuinely resonated with you and you wish to support the channel more directly, you can use the thanks button below. Even small support makes a meaningful difference. It helps this work continue, grow, and reach further, perhaps even becoming a new sign for someone else who is also searching for meaning. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video.